Right.
He will remain, according to reporting from CBS News, until he has to show up tomorrow for his arraignment at a New York City court.
We want to bring in now CBS News national correspondent and our fellow co-anchor of the midday, Errol Barnett. He is there outside of LaGuardia as we are seeing the former president's plane land right now. Errol, tell us, officially on the ground in New York in about 5 seconds, what is the situation like there at LaGuardia? What are the security concerns? What are you seeing and hearing?
Lana and Lilia, this is a significant moment as we watch President Trump's private aircraft as a private citizen, what his team had described as Trump Force One leading up to his time in the presidency, landing and returning back here in New York as Donald Trump faces justice. The security situation here at LaGuardia is a strengthened posture from the Port Authority police. Secret Service agents and their vehicles are already on the tarmac waiting for this aircraft to arrive at the private terminal. And from here, Donald Trump will then transit for about 30 minutes to his old former home at Trump Tower, the place he famously in 2016 or in 2015 announced his campaign for the nomination, and ultimately which made him win the nomination and won the White House. This is the moment. This is the moment. Donald Trump returns to New York to face what he says is a witch hunt against him. But we've watched, as his campaign says, they've already made $4 million since the indictment. So it's both a legal threat, but a money-making opportunity for the former president as he now lands in his former home of Queens.
Right now, 3:27 p.m. is when the plane has made landing. Errol, you have been there near LaGuardia for several hours today. What can you tell us about security measures? We know that NYPD officers were all told to be ready for deployment in uniform. This started last week. We know that there's coordination with the Secret Service, but what does it look like there on the ground? How's security and how are those preps for the tour? I mean, for the travel between there and Trump Tower ahead this afternoon?
That's right. Well, I'll give you a kind of the lay of the land a bit. Here at LaGuardia, I'm at Terminal A, which is its own kind of offshoot from the rest of the airport. So there isn't a ton of airport traffic where I am. In fact, that plane is so close to where I'm standing, I can hear those engines just in the distance. So the president taxiing not too far from where I'm standing. Mayor Eric Adams here in New York said earlier, and you broadcasted it live on the stream, that there would be rolling road closures during Donald Trump's time here. Remember, he's just landing here in the city to face the indictment tomorrow, see the charges, and then he returns to West Palm Beach. So he really is coming in and then exiting the city, taking every step to minimize disruption and security threats as possible. The city also making it clear there are no specific or direct threats that they're aware of, but they are also aware of the heated political rhetoric in the country. One pro-Trump supporter drove past us not too long ago and shared a number of expletives, as well as his support of President Trump and his dislike of President Biden. The city knows that. They know that there could be some very vocal pro-Trump supporters. And so we don't believe there will be road closures between here at LaGuardia and Trump Tower, but we also don't know which specific route the president will take. The Secret Service has already mapped this out to minimize disruption, but we do expect the president will leave LaGuardia, head onto the BQE, the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, and then make it over to Manhattan and Trump Tower. So we understand there'll be limited disruption, but we're all about to watch this unfold in real time right now.
Yeah, and the mayor actually said, try to use public transportation if you can, because even, there's some road closures and there's just going to be a lot of traffic looking ahead at people wanting to either show their support or the opposite of that.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing Mayor Adams say we're not a playground for people to misplace their anger. New York City is homes for many people. But as you say, Errol, it wouldn't be the first time that New Yorkers heard some expletives out on the street. Remind our viewers, however, the real substance behind these charges. We haven't seen the indictment released yet, so we don't know the specifics of any crimes that he's being charged with. But tell us more about the payments to Stormy Daniels and what what's behind that in terms of potentially some criminal misconduct.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question because there are so many legal threats the president faces. It might be first important to say what this is not. This has nothing to do with January 6th and the insurrection at the Capitol. This has nothing to do with potential election interference in Georgia as it relates to the president asking for additional votes. And this has nothing to do with classified documents being discovered at the president's West Palm Beach home in Mar-a-Lago. This is all connected, we understand from CBS sourcing, to payments that were made before President Trump won the White House. While he was campaigning, it was alleged, and his lawyer, former lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, has admitted as much, that there was an affair between the former president as a private citizen and an adult actress, and he didn't want it published, he didn't want it publicized, and effectively paid off that actress to not speak about it. Michael Cohen says as much, and the ways in which the Donald Trump campaign for president, according to documents, allocated those funds, they were described as reimbursements for a whole slew of reasons, none of them moral. It is against the law to misrepresent how campaign funds are being used. That is likely at the center of this case in Manhattan, being brought by the district attorney. And because of the witnesses that have been called, we've seen Alan Weisselberg, who was running the Trump Organization. We've heard of Mr. Pecker, who was at the National Enquirer, a tabloid. We've heard Michael Cohen as well, his former fixer and lawyer. Effectively, it's possible that that action, that illegal action, which would have been a campaign finance violation, could be upgraded from a misdemeanor to a felony if it's connected to other crimes related to those business practices. So again, we won't have this confirmed until Tuesday. We won't know for sure, but this all centers around the activity Donald Trump performed as a private citizen while he was running for president. At that time, he was based here in Trump Tower in New York, and that's why those chickens in some ways are coming home to roost. This has nothing to do with what he did as president. Those other cases continue, Lana and Lilia, but that's why this moment is so remarkable. We are about to watch former President Trump return to New York. These will be his final moments moving before he is at Trump Tower and heading to the courthouse on Tuesday. So just really a remarkable moment we haven't really seen before.
And we are watching every aspect of that. Our viewers can see the Trump plane on the tarmac there at LaGuardia, where our Errol Barnett is also following everything for us. The ground crew in place, having just moved the stairs up to the plane. We expect to see the former president disembark at any moment. While we are doing that, we also want to bring in CBS News political director Finn Gomez. He is in West Palm Beach. Finn, obviously being down there, you are seeing something different and hearing something different perhaps from what Errol referred to with that Trump supporter and what he had to say here in New York City. Tell us just about the mood there in that very red area where the former president has made his home.
Yeah, what we are seeing is a very vocal and growing amount of supporters who have gathered around Mar-a-Lago, who gathered around before the president, along the airport before the former president took off from West Palm Beach to New York. Supporters of his waving flags, singing songs, chanting signs that had pro-Trump support, very representative of his MAGA-based supporters, that 20 or 30% of the base of the Republican Party that support the former president. In most recent national polls, you see the former president, who is also a 2024 candidate, really be at the top of the heap at this stage, this early stage of the 2024 presidential cycle. And what we are seeing, what we are hearing is, from that hardcore base who support the former president, regardless of these, of the charges and the arraignment that he now faces today. And as Errol said, a very historic and unprecedented place in American politics, where we've seen a former president and current 2024 presidential aspirant being essentially surrendering himself to authorities and facing the charges that he is expected to face in a little while.
In just a few hours, yeah. So, Finn, I just kind of want to do a bit of a recap. We are looking at former President Donald Trump's private jet. It made landing. We saw a group of people descend. I am assuming the former president was there. To be honest, the shot is a little bit far away for me to completely identify.
A lot of men in suits with briefcases.
So, I mean, it could be Secret Service. The former president could be there. I'm sure we're going to see telephoto images a little bit later. So I'm not sure if I can say that he has actually stepped onto New York land or not. I believe that might have just been Secret Service. We're still waiting for him to come down. But let's talk, Finn, because you have been covering this extensively and know all the tidbits about it, about the legal strategy. We know that given that this plane has made landing, former President Donald Trump was not fighting or staying in Florida. He's going to show up. He's going to surrender. That's what's expected to happen tomorrow, for him to be booked and photographed and fingerprinted. What do you know? What do we know, at least from your reporting, about what's going to happen there? What kind of exceptions, perhaps, do we believe are going to be made, if any, given that this is an unprecedented event, a former president who's going to be arraigned? And also, just talk to us a little bit about the legal strategy as we continue to see people coming out of the plane and await for the former president to walk out.
Yeah, absolutely, Lilia. One thing I would want to add is that those who are traveling with the president, I was in Mar-a-Lago earlier today as part of the political poll covering his departure, and who I saw were some of his top senior advisors who were joining him, Chris LaSavita, Susie Wiles. Those are essentially his campaign managers, if you will. Also, Jason Miller, his senior communications advisor, and some of the other folks that advise him that are traveling with him. But to your point, while this is the first time that former President Trump is facing and will be arraigned and processed tomorrow under this criminal investigation. This is not the first time that he has been involved in cases and legal cases. In fact, he's quite has the reputation over his years and prior to politics of being very litigious and being very involved in lawsuits against him and himself. Filing lawsuits against multiple people, and somewhere around the really exorbitant amount of lawsuits that he has been involved in. And one of the strategy that is really he's known for, if you will, Lilia, is attack and delay, and essentially attacking his legal opponents, if you will, and then delaying the legal process. We will see if that is in fact the strategy that is seen here as well. But he is well known for that strategy of attack and delay. We've seen him attack not only the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, who's behind this investigation, but also the judge in the case. So what you're, and by doing that also, Lilia, the other side of this is that he's inflaming and encouraging his political supporters to back him. And we have seen that. We have seen some of that evidence in the data that's been presented in national polling, where that base has come up and supported the former president and current 2024 early frontrunner, if you will.
Yes, historic indeed. In fact, the only other time that a U.S. president has ever been arrested was actually Ulysses S. Grant while in office. He was speeding in his horse-drawn carriage, but said that the policeman who arrested him was right to do so. Not getting the same reaction, though, for former President Trump, and it's definitely a different level of severity of these alleged crimes. I want to bring back in our colleague, Errol Barnett, who is there on the ground in LaGuardia, watching things develop.
At an earshot.
Within earshot, yes, of the former president's plane. He could hear those jets as they were landing. Errol, has the mood shifted now that the plane those doors have opened and some of the Secret Service, potentially some of the lawyers for the former president have now disembarked?
Well, certainly no horse-drawn carriages here, Lana, but as we watch these live pictures, these aerial shots of the Secret Service coming out the rear of the aircraft and some of the luggage equipment approaching, we understand that Donald Trump, it may just be moments away from walking down those steps and entering those special Secret Service vans, which are on the tarmac. We counted about half a dozen or so, fueled up and ready to bring him from here at LaGuardia to Trump Tower. And viewers should understand what we're watching here is Donald Trump getting closer and closer to having his mugshot taken. I mean, that's the bottom line. These charges that we know about will result in him entering the courtroom as any other private citizen would have to do, and he'll be booked. There will be a mugshot of Donald Trump, and he's getting much closer to that moment right now.
Yeah, we heard Michael Cohen.
The mood here is still the same.
Just on that note, Errol, we heard Michael Cohen, his former attorney, and then turned against him, saying that that mugshot in particular was, according to Cohen, Trump's nightmare.
And it's something that we don't know we'll get to see, or when, if and when, that's really up to the court. We keep trying to guess around here at which point the former president is going to disembark, Errol. We keep seeing a little bit
we'll
of
certainly
movement.
know. Yeah, I'm watching those same pictures with you. We'll certainly know when Donald Trump is in the motorcade, because everybody will get together and move quite quickly. The wider shot showed you there's about a dozen vehicles encircling the aircraft right now. But when you make the point about this mugshot, and even some Trump supporters saying, hey, it should be printed on T-shirts, and oh man, he's going to win the next election because of this. Keep in mind that Donald Trump is already proving himself as capable of making money from all these controversies. Just a few weeks ago, while he was in Waco, Texas, which was the last time we saw this aircraft in motion for a campaign rally, Donald Trump released a song called Justice for All, performed by a group he described as the J6 Choir. The January 6th Choir, and the song was effectively a group of men singing the Star-Spangled Banner interspersed with Donald Trump saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And Donald Trump at that campaign rally told the audience that it's available on all your streaming platforms and you can download it now. So that's just one example of the president using a case against him to make money. And as I've said earlier, his campaign says that they've raised more than $4 million since this indictment was announced.
Which is not
Thursday.
as much as in his last time campaigning. I mean, he used to be a lot more effective, raising tens of millions in a short amount of time. But Errol, tell us a little bit. What do you know about who's around him or who's supporting him? Perhaps who's traveling with him, besides, of course, the Secret Service and the, I'm sure, group of attorneys. We know about at least a couple who've been doing the media rounds. And what do you know about their plans ahead of tomorrow's arraignment?
Yes. No. Well, it is not clear to me who is traveling with Donald Trump at the moment, and I just feel like this is such a surreal moment because we're now. Yeah. I mean, this is probably the most famous luggage in the country right now as we watch bags come off of an aircraft. But it does speak to the enormity of the moment as we watch Donald Trump return. We haven't seen former First Lady Melania Trump appearing with Donald Trump at recent events. It's unclear if she would make this roughly 24-hour trip back to New York. And we should also note that with Donald Trump planning to meet with his legal team this evening, this is a very fast turnaround. He is being brought back
and there, I believe we are actually, sorry, Errol, I think we're
system.
seeing the president, the former president, Donald Trump, now disembarking from the plane. Again, this is a wide shot, but that looks to be
absolutely
Donald Trump actually walking down now. Notably, there are no waves, no crowd to greet him. So a different type of scenario than the former president is accustomed to.
A more solemn one, 3:44 in the east. He has now gotten into his vehicle. And Errol, I'm sure you're going to see this motorcade pass right by or behind you on their way to Trump Tower.
And I'll just tell you this, what was noteworthy to me from watching Donald Trump exit the aircraft, and no, there are no kind of supporters there around him. There was no fist pump. His kind of trademark act when he exits his aircraft is kind of, you know, defiantly pump his fist in the air as a champion. He seemed here just to kind of quickly get off the aircraft and head straight into that vehicle. Everyone else's luggage all being pulled together, and we will watch the former president drive out just a short space behind me as he makes his way to Trump Tower. But this is certainly a sobering moment in so many ways. I'm just looking closely at who may be exiting the aircraft as well. I have some
Must be a
I
former
have some thoughts
First
on who
Lady
that might
Melania
be, but I
Trump.
don't want
I'm not
to.
sure that it is, though.
No, it's
I'm
not?
not sure that
It might be
is.
unusual
Might
if
be.
she's walking the opposite direction.
Right.
So I
To a
would
different
I would
vehicle.
hesitate from making
Yeah.
any guesses.
Yeah.
But you're right. We're watching.
So, Errol, you stay right
We're
there.
watching this
Stay
from
on
so
top of
far
it. We'll
away.
give you a second to report it out. Meanwhile, we're going to pop back over to Finn Gomez to get his take. I imagine, Finn, you have been watching all of this as well. Errol made a point about that trademark fist bump we saw as the former president departed from West Palm. He at least gave one wave out. Here, coming off of the plane, there were no waves. There was nothing sort of congratulatory or celebratory in his movement from the plane.
And there's no supporters because this is the tarmac of an airport, which nobody has access to. So certainly, you know, the kind of place where he would have that kind of a rallying or campaign tone. But
what type of tone do you think the former president is going to try and strike while he is on the ground here, Finn?
Well, I think that, you know, I think it's, you know, the point about the raised fist pump and all that. And I think Lydia has, you know, makes a great point that he really only has that interaction when he's at a rally or has supporters around him. We will likely see many fist pumps, if you will, tomorrow night at Mar-a-Lago when he returns back for those remarks that he's going to give. You know, those landing, though, I did spot some of his senior advisors, including Stephen Chung, his communications director, Margot Martin, one of his communications staff, and Chris LaSavita, who's also essentially his co-manager along with Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles is also traveling with him. But one point I also want to just make out, guys, is that, you know, as the former president is landing to face, you know, and getting ready to face the processing and the arraignment that he has to face tomorrow, you know, there's one split screen. Our colleague Ed O'Keefe points out that is something that the White House wants, and the current president wants.
White House, yes.
Current White House is to show that as he was arriving, President Biden was in Minnesota touting his legislative accomplishments, while Trump was landing in New York to face his indictment, and that is something that just politically has been something that has resonated, I think, throughout the political world. And as we are, fully into this 2024 race, even though we're still expecting others to jump into the race later this year. But I think it's important to note that there was some reporting that Ed O'Keefe and I both had that we reported today that, the White House and sources close to the White House say that his political operation, which was looking at April as a potential launch date for his reelect, has now been shifted, if you will, to later this year, even as late as June or July in the summer. Why? In part because of this. In part because of this attention that the former president is getting. In part because the former president, who's leading most national polls, is also fighting and squabbling with his closest, his nearest rival, who hasn't even jumped in the race yet. That's Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. So what you're seeing is this contrast between the former president and the current president, and it's something this current White House very much wants.
And Finn, we want to pop back over to Errol as we see the president's motorcade starting to move where he is at LaGuardia. Errol, your take.
We're watching President Trump's motorcade just make its way to the exit behind where I'm standing. Behind me, what they've done here at LaGuardia is they've now held traffic to make sure that none of the public can get through. I'm just moving myself, so you may hear some shuffling as we make our way to a place where you can see it, but this is where the journey begins.
Is this as big as it gets? I mean, just from this aerial shot, we just see a handful, 3, maybe 9 vehicles or so. What does it look like in terms of the rest of the vehicles that perhaps are being used to keep the roads clear and safe?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, at the front of this line, you're seeing NYPD vehicles. Then you see Secret Service SUVs, and that is followed by some other emergency vehicles, including an ambulance, an FDNY ambulance, just making sure that every resource is available for any former president. This is the type of security detail that is afforded to all of them. And we understand that as they make their way to New York, they're going to have to enter what we all know as the BQE, the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, a very busy highway through the largest city in the country. I don't believe they have closed any of it yet, but we have our choppers above us at this moment, and you'll watch this footage as the president makes his way from a very busy airport through a major expressway and on his way to one of the most congested parts of the biggest city of the country, in East Midtown.
And we see actually
that exit is directly behind
that
us.
shot, right? Yeah. There you are. I can see it's very small. That place where you're located at Marine Air Terminal, and the motorcade now passing right behind you. You and Errol have both served time as White House correspondents. We've been in motorcades with President Trump. What's notable to me as I'm watching this is that every other time we've been in one of those, there has been a press van there with the president following his motions, and this time that's absent.
I think what's really important not to lose sight of is, of course, we're looking at something that looks very presidential because every former president has a Secret Service for their safety, but this is, at the end of the day, another citizen heading tomorrow to an arraignment to face criminal charges, and in a historic way, absolutely somebody who is a former president of the United States who was indicted. That has never happened before. So important not to lose sight of what is happening here. Somebody who is going to be in court tomorrow, photographed, fingerprinted, booked, possibly not handcuffed, but it is important that he's heading out there to surrender himself, accused, at least according to CBS News reporting, of multiple charges, including a felony for falsifying business records in the first degree. Errol Barnett is in New York. Finn Gomez is in West Palm Beach. Thank you both so much for your detailed reporting from the ground in Florida and New York.
Thanks, gentlemen. Well, President Trump, as you see, is on his way to Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue now, where he will spend the night. When his motorcade arrives, you will, of course, see it here live.
We're going to take a short break. You're streaming CBS News, always on.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur, Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job?
I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart.
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
World Wrestling Entertainment, better known as the WWE, is merging with the company that owns the UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championships. As part of the deal, the two groups are going to be forming a separate publicly traded entity valued at more than $21 billion. In a statement about the deal, the WWE executive chairman says that the new company, which doesn't have a name yet, will be a, quote, live sports and entertainment powerhouse.
And listen to this. Snoop Dogg stole the show at WWE's WrestleMania.